35.28, Aditta Pariyaya Sutta. This is one of the famous suttas. That's on page 1143. It's one of the very famous suttas because in the early days when the Buddha was gathering disciples, he found 1,000 ascetics who were staying by the banks of the river, and they were external ascetics, so they prayed to fire, they worshipped the fire, and they kept long hair. They were matted hair ascetics, and their name were Jatilas. They were called Jatilas. But I believe with good reason that they all practiced jhana and had attained jhana. That's why the Buddha went to them. The Buddha generally, when he wants to gather disciples, he will look for those who had attained jhana, because those who have attained jhana are very easy to teach. Even the first person the Buddha wanted to teach was his former teacher who taught him jhana. And it is clear from the Vinaya books why he selected his teacher first to teach was because he thought his teacher has attained jhana. It would be very easy for him to understand the Dhamma. So similarly, the Buddha came to these 1,000 Jatilas at the banks of the river, and because probably several of them had psychic power already, so it was not easy to convert, especially the leader. The leader thought that he was an arahant, probably because he had psychic power. So the Buddha stayed with them for several weeks. And during those several weeks, the Buddha showed indirectly psychic power to them to impress them. For example, at night, the Devas will come to see the Buddha. So when the Devas come to pay respect to the Buddha and talk to the Buddha, the whole place is lighted up. So they know, and then the next day they'll ask the Buddha, how come, who came to see you? The whole kuti around there was bright, and the Buddha said, oh, Sakadeva Raja came to see me. So they were very impressed. Then another night, Buddha said, oh, Brahma came to see me. So they were very impressed. And then other ways of showing psychic power, so much so that they were totally impressed with him. Then only the Buddha told off the leader, said, Kassapa, you keep thinking you are an arahant, but you are not an arahant, and you are not practicing the right way to become an arahant. So he got a shock because all the time everybody respect him. Here the Buddha is challenging him. So he started thinking, then he realized the Buddha's cultivation is much higher than him. Then he shaved off his hair and became a disciple of the Buddha. And when the 999 other disciples saw, they also shaved off their hair and all became disciples of the Buddha. So after they became disciples of the Buddha, then only the Buddha decided to teach them the Dhamma. And the Buddha taught them this sutta, Aditta Pariyaya Sutta. And just teaching them one sutta, they just heard one sutta, all of them became arahants, which proves indirectly that they all had attained the 4 jhanas. Because the condition for attaining arahanthood, according to the Buddha, is the 4 jhanas. So because they like to worship fire, the Buddha based his talk on fire. The moment the Buddha talked about fire, they all got very interested, all paid solid attention. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Gaya, and Gaya's head, together with 1,000 monks. That's just after they had ordained with the Buddha. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, monks, all is burning. And what monks is the all that is burning? The I is burning. Forms are burning. I consciousness is burning. I contact is burning. And whatever feeling arises with I contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful or neither painful nor pleasant, that too is burning. Burning with what? Burning with the fire of lust, with the fire of hatred, with the fire of delusion. Burning with birth, aging and death. With sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, I say. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying that the I, because we have the I, then we have the I consciousness, and then there is contact, and from contact feeling arises, and from feeling you have craving. So all this, you have passion. So all this is a cause for greed, hatred and delusion. And because of greed, hatred and delusion, you will have birth, aging and dying, and sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, all kinds of suffering. Similarly, the Buddha said the ear is burning, sounds are burning, ear consciousness is burning, ear contact is burning, and whatever feeling arises with ear contact as condition, that too is burning. Burning with what? Burning with the fire of lust, hatred and delusion, burning with birth, aging and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, I say. Similarly, the nose is burning, odors are burning, nose consciousness is burning, nose contact is burning, and whatever feeling arises with nose contact as condition, that too is burning. Burning with what? Burning with the fire of lust, hatred, delusion, burning with birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. Similarly, the tongue is burning, tastes are burning, tongue consciousness, etc. is burning. Body is burning, touch, tactile objects are burning, body consciousness is burning, body contact is burning, and whatever feeling arises is burning. And the mind is burning, thoughts are burning, mind consciousness is burning, mind contact is burning, and whatever feeling arises, that too is burning. Burning with the fire of lust, hatred and delusion, burning with birth, aging and death, with sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair, I say. Seeing thus, monk, the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards the eye, towards forms, towards eye consciousness, towards eye contact, towards whatever feeling arises with eye contact as condition. Similarly, the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards the ear, towards sounds, towards ear consciousness, towards ear contact, etc. Similarly, experiences revulsion towards the nose, towards odors, towards nose consciousness, etc. Towards tongue, towards taste, towards tongue consciousness, towards body, towards touch, towards body consciousness, etc. And similarly towards mind, towards thoughts, towards mind consciousness, etc. So experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge. It is liberated. He understands, destroyed his birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the 1,000 monks were liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. Which means all 1,000 of them attain arahanthood. So you see, for a simple discourse like this, for a person to attain arahanthood, the mind must be so clear that every sentence that the Buddha says, they can absorb so clearly. The Buddha says that when we listen to the Dhamma, whether we can absorb or not depends on the condition of our mind. If a person has attained the 4 jhanas, like these monks, their mind is so clean of defilements, clean of the hindrances. So it's just like the Buddha says, I gave a simile, if you want to dye a piece of cloth, if you have a white, clean piece of cloth, you soak it in the dye, when you take out, it absorbs all the color. Just like a clean mind absorbs all the Dhamma. But if you have a dirty piece of cloth, with colors already and it with oil, with stain, dirty and all that, you go and soak it in the dye and you take out, it cannot absorb. Cannot absorb any color. So that's for most people, our mind is dirty with all the defilements, with all the hindrances and all that. So that's why the importance of attaining focused mind, having samadhi, mind that is attained samadhi is rid of all the defilements, the hindrances. 35.6060 on page 1149. Buddha said, "Monks, I will teach you the Dhamma for the full understanding of all clinging or attachment." Listen. And what, monks, is the Dhamma for the full understanding of all clinging or attachment? Independence on the I in forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the tree is contact. With contact as condition, feeling comes to be. Seeing thus the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards the I, towards forms, towards I consciousness, towards I contact, towards feeling. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, the mind is liberated. With its deliverance, he understands, clinging has been understood by me. Similarly, independence on ear and sounds. Ear consciousness arises. Independence on nose and smells. Independence on tongue and taste, body and touch, mind and thoughts. Consciousness arises. The meeting of the tree is contact. With contact as conditioned, feeling comes to be. And then seeing thus the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards the six sense spaces. And experiencing revulsion, it becomes dispassionate. And through dispassion, the mind is liberated. This is the Dhamma for the full understanding of all clinging. So why the Buddha says, from this you can understand clinging. Firstly, you see, all these conditions, they are like a chain. For the eye, there must be forms in front of the eye. And then the consciousness arises. And then the meeting of the tree is contact. And then, because of contact, you pay attention and feeling arises. And then, because of feeling, you have pleasant feeling, you have unpleasant feeling, and you have neutral feeling. Pleasant feeling, when you experience, there's a tendency to cling to it, to lust for it, to crave for it, to want to experience it again. When you have unpleasant feeling, painful feeling, there is revulsion. You want to get far away from it. You don't want to experience it again. So, if you understand that this craving arises from conditions, arising from all these conditions, and it gives you suffering. And the suffering is because of the six sense bases. When you have the six sense bases and you have contact, then because of feeling, then suffering comes to be. So understanding this, then learned disciple, he experiences revulsion towards the source of suffering, which is the six sense bases. And then when he becomes disenchanted, then that is followed by dispassion, and he becomes liberated. .85. Then the Venerable Ananda approached the Blessed One and said to him, "Venerable Sir, it is said, empty is the world, empty is the world. In what way, Venerable Sir, is it said, empty is the world?" This word empty, is a translation in Chinese is what? Kong. Comes from the word sunyata, sunya. It is because, Ananda, it is empty of self and what belongs to self that it is said, empty is the world. And what is empty of self and of what belongs to self? The I, Ananda, is empty of self and of what belongs to self. Forms are empty of self and of what belongs to self. I, consciousness, is empty of self and of what belongs to self. I, contact, is empty of self and of what belongs to self. Whatever feeling arises, also is empty of self. Similarly for all the other sense bases. So it is Ananda because it is empty of self and of what belongs to self that it is said empty is the world. So here the word empty or emptiness, sunyata, Does not mean that there's nothing in the world. Sometimes Chinese books, they always talk about kong, as though there's nothing. It's not the meaning. Meaning is that it is anatta, no self. And no self means there is no one thing that is unchanging, that is permanent, that remains the same. So because everything is changing all the time, you cannot identify any one thing as having a self, having a core, an unchanging core. So that's the meaning of emptiness, kong, sunyata. On one occasion, the Venerable Ananda and the Venerable Udayi were dwelling at Kosambi in Gosita's park. Then in the evening, the Venerable Udayi emerged from seclusion and approached the Venerable Ananda. He exchanged greetings with the Venerable Ananda, and when they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, he sat down to one side and said, "Friend Ananda, in many ways the nature of this body has been declared, disclosed, and revealed by the Blessed One thus. For such a reason, this body is not self. Is it possible to explain the nature of this consciousness in a similar way, to teach, proclaim, establish, disclose, analyze, and elucidate it thus? For such a reason, this consciousness is not self." Stop here for a moment. So here, Venerable Udayi says that the Buddha has taught that this body is not self. Is it possible in a similar way to say, to explain that consciousness is not self? These two things, the body and consciousness or mind, the Buddha says it's much easier to see that the body is not self because we can see the body changing year by year as you grow older. And then also you can see not only your body, you can see your parents' body, your grandparents' body, your relatives and all that. They grow old, they become sick and they die. So it's much easier to see that the body is not the self. It's very hard to see the mind or consciousness as not the self. That's why here he's asking Venerable Ananda. And Venerable Ananda said, "It is possible, friend Udayi. Doesn't I consciousness arise in dependence on the I and forms?" And he said, "Yes, friend. If the cause and condition for the arising of I consciousness would cease completely and totally without remainder, could I consciousness be discerned? No, friend. In this way, friend, this has been declared, disclosed and revealed by the Blessed One thus. For such a reason, this consciousness is not self." Let's stop here for a moment. So here, Ananda says, I consciousness arises on condition that two things are present. The I must be there, forms must come before the I. With these two conditions, I consciousness arises. So since I consciousness arises dependent on these two things, the I and forms, and these two things, the I and forms, are also impermanent, right? So when they cease, so if you say that I consciousness is the self, then when the I and the form cease, that means the condition for I consciousness to arise ceases, then naturally I consciousness will cease. So if I consciousness ceases, then where is the self, right? If there's a self, it must exist all the time. But if it arises and then passes away, arises and passes away, it cannot be the self. The idea of the self, atta, is something that is permanent, that is never changing, that there is a core, that unchanging, which you can identify as the self. But if it changes and it can disappear, then how can it be the self? Right? So Nanda is trying to say, for the reason that I consciousness is dependent on conditions, and when the conditions cease, then I consciousness also must cease. So it cannot be, it is not self. Similarly, ear consciousness arises in dependence on the ear and sounds. So in a similar way, ear consciousness also is not the self when the ear and sounds cease. And similarly for the other senses. In this way, friend, it has been declared, disclosed and revealed by the Blessed One thus. For such a reason, this consciousness is not self. Suppose, friend, a man needing hardwood, seeking hardwood, wandering in search of hardwood, would take a sharp axe and enter a forest. There he would see the trunk of a large plantain tree, that means a banana tree, straight, fresh, without a fruit but core. He would cut it down at the root, cut off the crown, and unroll the coil. As he unrolls the coil, he would not find even soft wood, let alone hardwood. So too, a monk does not recognize either a self or anything belonging to a self in these six bases for contact, these six sense bases. Since he does not recognize anything thus, he does not cling to anything in the world. Not clinging, he is not agitated. Being unagitated, he personally attains Nibbana. He understands, destroyed his birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. That's the end of the sutta. So the Buddha says, if a monk sees that the six sense bases and all the things connected with the six sense bases are impermanent and not self, it means that the whole world is impermanent and not self, because the whole world exists in the six sense bases, the six consciousness. So when he does not cling to anything in the world, then he becomes disenchanted, and he becomes dispassionate, and he attains liberation.